Good afternoon here on the East Coast, and good day and welcome wherever and whenever you're tuning in here. This is a kind of special edition holiday flex scheduling, trying to do our best NFL flex to fill in where we can. Edition of Tailgate Trash Talk brought to you by Backyard Sports. I got Bentley with me. How you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. I'm good. I'm sleepy, tired from the holidays, but
Holiday
I'm
lag,
good.
right?
Yeah.
How was your Christmas, man?
It was very nice. It was very nice. How was yours?
Good, good. Kids are spoiled as usual.
As usual.
Yeah. So
Good.
anyway, let's jump into it, man. We had an interesting first round of the playoff. I want to kind of get your thoughts first because there's been a lot of conversation about the scores of these games, and you and I rehashed it a little bit, and I think Kirk Herbstreit did a good job of like reminding everybody as well. And I think some of the talking heads have come to Jesus, right? Have had their come to Jesus moment about what the CFP is, and I think others are still kind of steadfast that like, oh, this team should have been in, this team should have been in. I want to get your thoughts in terms of like the blowouts in the first round here of the CFP. What do you think caused it? Do you think it's a problem? And what do you think the committee going forward? How do you think we change this to make the first round more competitive, maybe in college football going forward?
Well, I said on this show that given the history of the committee, and I don't mean the 4-team playoff, I meant the way they set the rankings in previous weeks, that they got the selections correct, right? And I said that because there is no official guidance as to how they're supposed to pick these teams, right? Did I ever for a second believe that they picked the 12 best teams? No. But given the way that they had made the rankings the weeks prior leading up to the selection show, I think they got it right. Did that bear fruit in round one because we saw 4 blowouts? Probably not. But they have no parameters set in place, no given other aside from the conference champions
Yeah.
getting auto bids, there is no like rhyme or reason as to why they select these teams. And Kirk said the same thing on that broadcast during the Ohio State game. He said, "We did not pick the 12 best teams. They picked they picked the 12 teams that had the most wins."
Yeah.
Right? That's just what they did. They were like, "Who has the most amount of wins? Let's put them in the playoff." That's never been what college football is about, right? Like, obviously, you want to win every game, and it used to mean a little more before opt outs and all the money came in and all that stuff. Whatever. That has nothing to do with this. But like picking the 12 best teams is not just looking at the guys who have the most 11 or have the most wins and saying, hey, these are probably the best teams in the country. No, you have to take into account strength of schedule, strength of record.
The eyeball
When
test is a big, big deal in college football.
100% eyeball test, right? Like who these teams, or excuse me, when these teams lost their games. Like Clemson lost the last game of the season and then blew a 17-point lead in the second half of their championship game. And they were the only team this weekend to have a lead change in their game. Like,
Yeah.
are they one of the
30
12 best
seconds
teams?
in.
Yeah, exactly, right? You go down, you score the first drive, and then you don't, like, I guess, honestly, I don't think Cade Klubnik played terribly in that game. I thought he looked, like, fairly decent. He threw 3 touchdown passes. I think he was the only passer to do that against Texas this year. But the team as a whole is not one of the 12 best teams in the country. And that is what led to this blowout weekend that we had, was the committee decided they were going to put the teams in that had most wins and not think twice about it, right? And then you end up with Kurt Signetti punting the ball at midfield on 4th down 3 scores. Like that's how this comes about.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, for sure. Robert, thanks for joining. I ate too much food yesterday anyway to think about more food.
Cookie.
We've got desserts. But yeah, I'm with you. I think we've discussed this on the show. We've also discussed this in our chat that we typically talk ball in to make sure that we're tracking for the show, but also just because we like ball.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest problem is something that I hate to give Cam Newton credit because he's usually so far off the mark with a lot of his takes and the way he acts and talks about the game of football and whatnot. However, I'm going to give him credit because I saw a hit from him yesterday. I saw it, but I think it's from like Monday or whatever. But either way, he was on his podcast talking about it, and he put it kind of how we put it, but I think he put a better term on it.
Mm-hmm.
College football, more so than other college sports, right? Because we see Cinderella in baseball, we see Cinderella in basketball, we see Cinderella in other sports, women's sports, there's been Cinderella, yada, yada. Football has weight classes. And unfortunately, we have like 4 or 5 teams that fit into like the heavyweight weight class.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a dozen or so teams that fit into like the light heavyweight class. And then it's like middleweight and lighter. And then there's like
Mm-hmm.
straw weight folks that are those kind of also rans in the mid-major or smaller conferences. And unfortunately, in the game of football, you can't overcome like middleweights aren't beating heavyweights in football very often, and especially not like in December and January when these teams have grown from the season. I'm going to use Notre Dame as the example, right? Because I've gone in hard on them and for their loss to NIU. But playing an Indiana team who is, in my opinion, probably a middleweight, right? At best, they're a middleweight right now, and they had a great season. I want to give
Mm-hmm.
them credit for the great season they had because it's first time in Indiana history they've won double digits. First time in Indiana history they've done well. They had a great conference schedule, yada yada, but they had a very favorable schedule. And yeah, like MMA or boxing, I think it's perfectly I think it's perfectly put that way because like Conor McGregor's not fighting John Jones and beating John Jones, right? So Indiana fighting a heavyweight just isn't. It's just not. It's not the way it works in football. The gap between good and average, great, good, and good and average, like is so big in football because of the way the rosters are constructed versus basketball, where like you can get a team. We'll take UMBC as an example. They're the most recent big time example. There were 16, they beat a 1. First time it had ever been done. UVA is the number 1 seed, number 1 overall seed in that tournament. Dad, thanks for tuning in. And UMBC just they have senior guards. They got hot from the field, and UVA is not like an offensive juggernaut under Tony Bennett. And all of those things add together, and you get a big upset. And you get these runs. We were talking about Jim Larinaga before the show. It sounds like he's out at Miami, but at George Mason and Shaka Smart at VCU. When you can put these things together, you can make a run in basketball because the rosters are small. There's not that many people on the floor at a given time, right? 5 on the floor at any given time versus 11 guys. And the difference is in the trenches, really, in football, where you get these big time offensive and defensive lines that can just change the game. They change the line of scrimmage, and it's hard to make up for that. So it really is like the gap is just so much bigger in the game of football versus the game of basketball and whatnot, where we talk about Cinderella and these March Madness runs, that you're going to end up with these blowouts if, as you so well put it, if we're looking for the most deserving or the teams with the most wins, right? We're going to get in Indiana. We're going to get, I anticipate, an Arizona State who's outmatched against Texas. We're going to get these games like where they're just outmatched, and that's the truth of it in football more so than in basketball. So I'm with you. We got to get to where we can get the 12 best teams, but there's got to be a change in criteria, and there's got to be very deliberate and very well delineated criteria for selecting the teams. It can't just be like, oh yeah, they're 11-1 in the Big Ten. Okay, cool. But are they on any given Saturday? Are they one of the 12 best teams in the country? On a neutral site, do you pick them? We'll take the 3 teams behind them, right? SMU or not South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama, right? Take Indiana on a neutral site. Do you pick them to beat any of those 3 teams?
Oh,
no, right? And that should be a criteria for the committee, right? Let's be honest about this thing. We don't have to bullshit the public into believing, yes, Indiana had a great season, so they deserve to be in the playoff, right? Same thing with like Clemson, right? ACC champion, but on a neutral site, do you pick them to beat Ole Miss, South Carolina, or Alabama? No, right? I think we could agree on that. So I think we have to get to that point, right? Because
Sure.
one, South Carolina beat them the week prior, right? So we know that. I'm ranting. I'm on my soapbox. I'm gonna get off of it. The blowouts are gonna happen because it's the game of football. And I want to go back to the 4-team playoff. How many blowouts did we have in the 4-team playoff?
Yep.
Honestly, I think it was like 80% of games in the 4-team era were decided by 2 scores or more.
Yeah.
So this isn't unique to the 12-team. This didn't change because we have more teams. We just have more of them because there are more games.
We got spoiled last year with the 14 playoff having 3 incredible games come out of that, right?
Yeah.
The first round games were
Which
awesome.
was a fucking anomaly.
Exactly. And so people, I'm going to say people, most college football fans who are casual remember that 14 playoff being awesome.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, the 12 team is just going to be more of that.
Yeah.
Completely ignoring the 9 seasons prior where there was a blowout in every single first round we had. There was a blowout. Like,
Yep.
and then the fucking Georgia TCU title game was 63-3. Yeah. Like, it's recency bias by the casual fan, and I think the committee has. I could be honest, I think the committee has some casual fans on there, and you get because of the conference realignment, Indiana ends up with a crazy easy schedule. No shame to them because they did have Michigan and they did have Washington, the 2 teams who played in the national title last year on their schedule. It just so happens they're in down seasons at the moment.
Major upheaval of both programs.
Exactly, right? So Indiana has the opportunity to go to win 11 games,
yep.
lose to the only 2 teams they played that were over 500. I guess they beat Michigan, but like the only real test teams they lost to in pretty handed fashion. It's like
the wild thing about this entire thing, we keep talking about Indiana, they had the lowest margin. And now I know they scored late in it, right? Again, it was a 3-score game. They scored late, made it 2 scores and closed the gap a little bit, and it got weird. But it is like an interesting tidbit that like that ended up being the closest margin. So
yeah,
kind of weird, but yeah, it just expect more of this, right? Until we get to a point, and I don't even know, like, even if we did reseeding, right, 1 through 12, I don't know. Instead of like we've talked about the auto buys, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we did reseeding based on where the committee had them, I don't know that we get less blowouts anyway. Like, I don't know that fixes this issue. I just don't know that fixes this issue. I think, and I don't know that it's even an issue, right? Because it's just, this is football. This is college football. Once the ice gets tilted as well, like, things can go very, very bad in a college football game. Whereas, like, I think everybody gets spoiled by the NFL too, where there's just not a lot of blowouts in NFL games. Like 70% or something like that are decided by 1 score or less. It's not like that in college football.
Right.
Anyway, off the rant, we'll start talking about the games that were actually played on the field. So you went 3 for 4 on your picks. I went 1 for 4, and we were exactly opposite. And somehow the only one that I got right is the team that's burnt me a million fucking times. But we'll start out the gate with Notre Dame, Indiana. Was a 7-point spread. Notre Dame ends up winning by, like I said, the tightest margin of the week, but they do cover the 7 points. I didn't think that Indiana was going to get quite as bullied up front as they did. I also didn't think that Coach Sig was going to coach as scared as he did. I don't know how much of a difference it would have made if he'd have gone for it. There were like 3 or 4 opportunities I thought they could have gone on 4th that it just seemed like the right call, and they didn't. I don't know how much of a difference it would have actually made, but I would have liked to see them at least play as if they were trying to win a CFP game. But Notre Dame wins handily. Again, it got a little weird late, and the score got a little tighter than the game actually was. But Notre Dame looked pretty good up front. I still worry a little bit about their ability to play in a game where they have to score as opposed to a game where they control the tempo. We're going to see coming up, because I think Georgia is a better test for them than an Indiana would be. But I do worry about it if they have to put it on Riley Leonard's shoulders going forward. I don't think this game told me that I can rest on the fact that Notre Dame's going to be able to handle any sort of like shootout type game. But good win for them. They have a really bad history in the CFP, so for them to maybe exercise some of those demons was nice for
Mm-hmm.
them. I do want to point out too, like all four home teams won. This was, I think, won some weather issues for a couple of the teams, but that home field advantage that we talked about not necessarily being a complete home field advantage seemed to work out this weekend, but we'll see going forward. Talk to me about Indiana Notre Dame though.
So I was having a discussion with a gentleman who is I he's a Lions fan, so I assume he's a Michigan fan.
Okay.
He was caping for the Big Ten, right? Obviously,
Mhm.
this is post the Tennessee loss, so all the SEC fans are like, "Oh my god, that was awful." I didn't think Tennessee was that great coming in, anyways, so I didn't. That was kind of expected, in my opinion. But he was like, "Man, Indiana, like they put up the biggest fight against." He was like, they played better against Ohio State than did the SEC. They put up the biggest fight this weekend in one of their games, and he was like, I just had like the most confidence in them, like coming out of these games, as if he thought they were playing again. I don't know. That was, and I was like, okay, that's
There's no
cool. That like,
consolation bracket.
yeah, like I don't. Are they getting a bowl game now? Did I miss that? What's happening? Because they're done. Sigs is recruiting now.
Yeah.
But my question to him was like, okay, you like they instilled a bunch of confidence in you. Which time on 3rd and long when they called a run play was it that you decided you had a lot of confidence in them?
Yeah.
Because that was my takeaway from the game
Yep.
was Coach Signetti came out here and talked all this shit on College Game Day. He's like, we don't just beat top 25 teams, we crush top 25 teams and Google me and all this stuff and you know best run defense in the country and all right, dude, fucking coach like it. Like,
Yeah.
don't punt the ball in the 4th quarter down 3 scores at
Yeah.
midfield. I don't. If you have all this confidence in your boys and Curtis Work is out here slinging the rock, like apparently you thought he was doing, call the plays that are going to get you the first downs and just run your offense, right? Like I didn't understand why he was calling all these run plays in obvious passing situations. Now I get that if you're trying to catch Notre Dame's defense sleeping and maybe break one, that's cool. But when you do it 3 or 4 times in a row, I like they kind of clue into that, right? And Notre Dame's secondary is really good. So it's not as if they could just drop back and pass and everything should be hunky dory because Notre Dame is obviously a very talented defense. And like I said, their secondary is incredible, but like you have to coach as though the season is on the line. And I just didn't think that Signetti came out and did that. You know, they rushed for 2.3 yards a carry in this game against Notre Dame. Like that just is not going to get the job done. You have to. There's game balance, right? You run the ball to open up the pass, and you pass the ball to open up the run. And they just neither of them were open, but like they were trying to lean so heavily on the run game to open up the pass, and they made no adjustments to that. And I thought it was a terribly coached game from Signetti. Obviously, the score late, and then they get the onside kick, and it's like, oh my god, no, that game was never in question. You know, I never once thought like Notre Dame is in trouble at any given point throughout that game.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. I was very, very disappointed in the approach to the game. I expected a very different approach. I thought the Indiana run defense was going to be better. I think they were somewhat respectable against Notre Dame. I thought they, the Ohio State game, I thought they lost it because of their special teams. I've been very vocal about that on the show. This game was basically like they coached themselves out of any chance to win. And I agree with you. I very disappointed in several of it. Like it started early too. It was like a 3rd and 11 on either their opening drive or their second drive, and they hand the ball, not even on like a draw. There's like no deception to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a shotgun handoff, and like you're not going to catch Notre Dame sleeping that bad, right? 3rd and 5, sure. You want to go 3rd and medium and maybe sneak a run in there, sure. But like 3rd and 11, you're not just going to like out leverage that defense. And I thought that the creativity was missing. I thought the ingenuity was missing, and I thought the aggression was missing badly. And I think that's the reason why they looked so bad in this game. On top of the fact that like Notre Dame's just a more talented football team.
Very much so.
And yeah, just a mess. We'll see how Sig reloads in recruiting and transfer portal, whether they can sustain some of this. You mentioned the schedule, very, very favorable for them this year. You're not going to catch Michigan in a down year every year. You're not going to avoid Penn State and a lot of the other school. Oregon, they didn't have to play Oregon. Several teams in the Big Ten that, because of the size of the conference, they were able to avoid some of those matchups. So going to need a lot of retooling and rethinking of the approach going forward. Onward to Penn State SMU. As I mentioned, Penn State's burned me a ton. I thought, when I made this pick, I was like, God, I legitimately feel like Penn State is more talented than SMU. I legitimately feel like Penn State is going to be able to assert themselves against SMU, but I also, in the back of my mind, was like, James Franklin is going to fucking burn me again. And SMU looked a little shell-shocked early in this game. I also think that the cold weather really hurt them early, especially in this game, much like you and I saw it down in Charlotte when we went to the game, that it wasn't nearly as cold there as it felt like it was in Happy Valley, and they really seemed to kind of not deal with it very well early in that game in Charlotte. They really didn't deal with it against Penn State, and Penn State's a better team than Clemson, and it showed in the result. Penn State handled it. They bullied them. SMU never really recovered the way that they recovered in the ACC championship game. And Penn State gets a win that James Franklin wishes SMU was number 10 so he could put it on his resume. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts in terms of your perception of Penn State. Has anything changed going forward after this game against SMU?
Not really. Yeah, it's a good win. You get a home win against a ranked opponent. Like that's good for them. Something to hang their hat on.
Too,
yeah, in a whiteout. It was a little fool's gold maybe with SMU. Probably should have taken some notes after that Duke game. All the turnovers they had. Kevin Jennings donating 21 points in the first half.
Off.
That's not a recipe for success. They didn't really have any answer for the Penn State pass rush. What's the guy's Abdul Carter, I believe.
Carter is
that kid's a freak. Yeah,
he's an NFL level pass rush.
Yeah, another number 11 coming off the edge in Penn State. That's not something an offense wants to see.
Nope.
I mean, this was just a blitzing from the start, right? The 2 pick sixes in the first quarter from Jennings, and they never recovered. Like you said, this was a game that was never in doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I picked SMU in this because I looked at all the games. I said, what's the most likely upset outcome? I'm just going to take that spread. Obviously, I was right, or I was wrong, and you were right here. So, tough. But my opinion of Penn State has not really changed. I think they are who they are. It changed more after the Oregon Big Ten title game than it did after this game. I thought that was the best game I saw Penn State play in 4 years, probably.
Yeah,
I mean,
that might be true.
They were able to hang with Oregon like we haven't seen anyone do really since Ohio State and Boise State. So that was really cool. But coming out of this game, I didn't learn much really from either side. But we're going to see. I mean, Boise State, what can they do against Penn State? They're going to have a test coming up. A player who's otherworldly that hasn't been stopped all year long.
Yeah.
What's James Franklin going to do?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I think I agree for the most part, just because of the way that the game played out. We knew Penn State had a lot of talent on the roster. It was a matter of whether they're going to be able to put it together against these better teams, which we haven't seen. You mentioned it, 4 years, might be even longer than that, that they've played a game like this that felt like it was more of kind of a complete package in the game. The offense moved the ball pretty well against an overmatched defense. Special teams was good, but also that defense was just unbelievable. You mentioned Abdul Carter. He's going to be a guy who's going to go pretty high in the first round in the NFL, and he showed it this weekend. He was unblockable this weekend. Yeah. Disrupted the backfield. Those turnovers, a lot of that, you see him in the backfield putting pressure on the quarterback, causing some of those early throws or bad decisions for sure. But yeah, the tests are going to get a little tougher as Penn State goes forward here. They got the fortunate side of the bracket though, so we did talk about that they are on the fortunate side of the bracket, so they might squeeze some wins out, get to the semifinal, and then things will get a little tougher. All right, Texas, Clemson. Clemson got a lead early, and I thought, hey man, that plus 12 is looking a little better. And then everything fell apart defensively for them. I was very surprised by how outmatched the back end of the Clemson defense looked against what we've talked about being like not a super overwhelming ensemble of playmakers on the Texas side of the ball. It just seemed like every time Texas got somebody into space, and it didn't really matter who it seemed this weekend, it was just somebody in space against the Clemson second and third level. They made plays and they beat this Clemson defense up pretty good. I was surprised by the final total scored in this game. It was a lot more of a shootout than I expected. I figured both defenses were gonna kind of assert themselves against the other offense. Didn't really happen so much. Clemson's offense got stymied for a bit, but as you mentioned, Cade Klubnik had 3 touchdown passes, the only quarterback this weekend to do so. Talk to me about Texas, Clemson. Did you learn anything about Texas in this? Because, like I mentioned, we've talked a lot about like it doesn't feel like they've got a ton of playmakers, but man, they were making guys miss and running dudes over in the second and third level against Clemson this weekend. And we talked about the defense being the strength for Clemson, not knowing if they could score points against Texas. Well, they did score points against Texas. They just couldn't fucking stop them.
Yeah. Yeah. This game was, aside from the outcome, it was really the opposite of how I imagined it going.
Same.
Like you, I kind of thought the defenses would reign the day, or would rule the day, I guess would be the proper terminology there. It was surprising that Cade played as well as he did. We've we've told people all year long that Cade is just not that good,
Right.
and then he comes out and plays what I thought was a pretty good game against an incredible defense at Texas.
Yep.
Just good game planning, I guess, by both offenses here. You know, the Texas offense looked much better than it has in recent weeks, mostly against Georgia, but regardless. That Clemson defense is not bad by any stretch. They're a pretty good defense, and Quinn Ewers just kind of made them look silly. They were able to run the ball. He was able to kind of toss it all over the field and pretty much do whatever he wanted. So is Texas's offense back? Is Arizona State in for just a true ass whooping, or are they going to be able to get the ball rolling like Clemson did? Not to spoil it, but I think the Arizona State offense is better than that Clemson offense. So I'm not sure if this was like a look ahead spot for Texas. Kind of feels rough to say that in a playoff scenario.
Yeah.
Like you can't really look ahead in a situation like that. But no, I was just really impressed by the offenses in this game, honestly. And I think Texas will be fine. That defense is still really good. Whenever they take the field against Arizona State, the Texas defense will still be the best unit on the field. Pound for pound, most talented unit on the field. But this game was just shocking to me because it played out the exact opposite of the game script that I had in my mind. So credit to Clemson for being able to figure that out and get their offense rolling. Like I said, the only game that had a lead change in it was because Clemson went down and scored on their opening drive. And then it was all Texas from there out, basically.
Yeah, I wonder how much Maffa's like health status changed the script for both Clemson's offense and Texas's defense. Like, I think they would have expected Maffa to be more of the center point for the Clemson offense, and Clemson probably knew that he wasn't near 100%, and they had a little bit of a change in approach, and Texas may have been caught off guard a little bit by that potentially. Just speculation. It is what it is. That I expect that Texas defense will be just fine against what I agree with you is probably a better offense down there in the desert. So we'll see how that goes, whether they can bounce back. We'll talk about that game coming up here in a moment. And then we finished the weekend with Ohio State, Tennessee, and talk about things going opposite of what I expected. I expected both of these defenses to really confound and stymie both offenses. I thought Tennessee's front four was going to be a menace against an Ohio State offensive line that we've talked about. It's not only is it super young, it's also depleted. Credit to Chip Kelly, credit to Ryan Day, credit to that Ohio State offense. They blew them out of the water. This was never a close game. all those Tennessee fans that traveled up. I think the final tally was around 30,000. Credit to them for showing up and showing out. Your team fucking did not do the same. Nico looks like there are large stretches of games, and we've talked about this in terms of like the complexity of the Tennessee offense and what Josh Heupel wants to do. There are large stretches of games, and we saw it again against Ohio State, where Nico looks like he just doesn't, like the ball gets snapped and he just like everything goes black and he just doesn't know like what he's seeing. He doesn't, and then when he snaps to, it's like, I gotta run and I'll try to run and maybe I can make something happen with my feet. He's not that electric of an athlete that he can just do that. Like he's not like a Jalen Daniels, right? Who can pull the ball down and make a lot of things happen with his feet.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good runner with the football. He's an effective runner when he's got the opportunity with lanes, but he's tall. He's a long strider. He's a guy who's more of kind of like a straight line, I'm going to chew up 7 yards and get down type of player. This offense really, really struggles when the quarterback isn't Hendon Hooker, who can teach a master class on the Josh Heupel offense. I'm really curious to see how they do going forward, but I think it really cost them in this game against a very good Ohio State defense. They just never had a chance to really get anything going. Never established the run game either, which I was very surprised by. I thought they'd be able to, but I think Sampson was more hurt than they let on. So credit to Ohio State, though. That offense looked so bad against Michigan. Like it looked like a JV offensive squad against Michigan. It looked like what we would expect from an Ohio State offense with all of that talent. Chip Kelly calling the plays, J.J. Smith and Emeka Ibuka just better than everybody else on the field, and the two-headed monster in the backfield was very, very good against a strong Tennessee defense. Ohio State looks every bit of the national champion that you've been telling everybody they would be coming out of this game.
Yeah, with I think it was 6.5 minutes to go in the first quarter, Jeremiah Smith got his second target of the game, which was the same number of targets he got the entire game against Michigan.
Yeah.
So at some point in time between the Michigan game and this game, Chip Kelly and Ryan Day remembered that they have an absolute freak, probably the 5th best receiver in the NFL right now, playing wide receiver for them as a true freshman in college. Yeah. So credit for them for remembering that. Yeah, this is the best team in the country. I mean, I've been saying it since August. I've been telling anyone that'll listen that Ohio State's the best team in the country, and they came out and they played like it, right? They played like it against Oregon. They played like it against Penn State. They played like it Saturday. And they're just the best. They have the most talent. They have Chip Kelly, who runs a very effective offensive scheme. He gets the guys rolling. Ryan Day, good coach. Crazy enough, I know people wanted him fired 2 weeks ago. Ryan Day's a good football coach.
Yeah. Just remind everybody out there, Ryan Day does not have a college football problem.
No.
Ryan Day has a Michigan problem.
Yep. He has, you go down his resume. He has one bad loss at Ohio State. It's this year to Michigan.
Yeah.
And I think they're on a warpath, man. I feel bad for the teams that gotta play across from them, because it does something when you hear folks calling for your head on a platter. It does something to you, right? Like it's not a situation that a lot of people find themselves in, right? But he's there for a reason. He got hired at Ohio State for a reason. I think he is there to prove to people that he is the national championship winning coach that I think he probably can be. He has the team to do it. Tennessee just looked overmatched in every sense. Like I was in the same boat as you. I thought that Tennessee front seven might be able to get things going against the depleted offensive line for Ohio State, and that just was never the case. It never happened. They were able to do anything they wanted on offense, right? And Nico turning the ball over didn't help them, certainly, but Nico could have not turned the ball over, and I don't think it would have mattered either way. Like Dylan Sampson going out of this game, Nico just being bad. He played badly on Saturday night. It was, what was the stat I sent you? 19 touchdowns for Nico on the season, and 15 of them came against like UTEP, Middle Tennessee, Akron, like just the bye schools. Yeah. And it's like, maybe that's a product of them running a complex offense and not having elite playmakers on the outside.
Or he's
maybe
just
it's
bad.
maybe he's just mid. Like maybe he just is not going to be the superstar guy that we all expected him to be.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. I would tend to lean more towards the complex offense and lack of playmakers on the outside. Just I don't think evaluators can be that wrong. You know, like you can obviously make mistakes and there's busts, but like he's got the physical tools to do it. He needs some help around him, and they were completely outmatched in every sense on Saturday night, and that's exactly how the game played out. And I wasn't shocked one bit because Ohio State's going to win the national title, and I'm going to make a lot of money.
For sure. There was something I was going to say about Nico. Now I lost it. But anyway, anything you want to talk that concludes the opening round here. But anything you want to talk about off of the CFP board from this past weekend?
Okay, question for you. You are a nondescript SEC program. Pick one. Doesn't matter who it is. You have an opening at quarterback. You are able to take one quarterback from any other SEC program going into the season next year. Which one are you taking?
Give me Diego Pavia, man. Like,
oh, okay.
I'm not. Look, Sellers ain't leaving South Carolina.
No, I'm not saying you have.
Oh, okay.
You just
I can take anyone.
Free reign. Yeah, free reign. You pick one quarterback from any SEC
it's
program.
Lenora Sellers. I think it's him, and what we've seen from DJ Lagway in Florida as well. I think it's them too. Give me Lagway for like ceiling because I haven't seen him because they were so bad this year.
Yeah,
I haven't seen him in a scenario where they can succeed, right? Like where we've seen the flashes and we know what DJ Lagway is, but like the nation doesn't. Give me that for the ceiling, but like I've seen it from Lenora Sellers this year against the best defenses in the SEC. Give me that known commodity, but I also agree with you. Like, or I think I would agree with you because you haven't necessarily given your answer yet. But I think if I'm looking at a ceiling pick, give me DJ Lagway because he I think could be special as well. I think Lenora Sellers is already like on that platform of like I expect him to be special next year. Lagway is still like I think he's going to be special next year, but I need Florida to be better.
Yeah. So my answer, I mean Homer pick, right? I'm taking Sellers. Who did ink a new deal with the Garnet Trust to stay in Columbia next season. So that one is on the board and he's coming back. But goddamn, if DJ Lagway did not put on an absolute show in the Gasparilla Bowl against a Tulane team that just, I mean, they were not there to play the game. You know, their quarterback left and it's kind of like, well, all right, here we go.
Let's figure out what next year is going to look like.
Exactly, 100%. Lagway going for 300 yards, like 22 to 35. He did have the 2 picks, but I mean, whatever. It happens. Freshman, it's a bowl game. It doesn't really matter. It matters to the kids, but like,
sure,
you know. Yeah, I just thought somebody posed that question to me, and I thought it was an interesting thought exercise because, like you said, we don't really know if Lagway is going to be special, but I fully expect him to be special. That kid is an alien. Yeah. And then Sellers, obviously, like, we know what Sellers is. And he's going to just continue to progress in his passing game.
Yeah.
Because if there's one bugaboo about Sellers right now, it's that anytime he has to drop back and pass the ball, you get a little worried about it. But all of the other things he fucking does is insane, right?
Yeah.
But Lagway is a guy, I don't ever worry about him when he has to drop back and pass the ball because that kid is making every throw every time. And that game against Tulane, he put it all on display for us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think Florida is going to be a better place next year. One, the schedule hopefully relents a little bit for them. And two, it was a weird kind of confluence of things this year. Very young team, and for some reason they wanted to stick with
Mertz.
It's 1:50 p.m. on the East Coast, and Graham Mertz is still not a college quarterback. Let's stop with that fucking nonsense. Not a major college program. should have Graham Mertz starting at quarterback. I don't know. They seemed like they were pretty entrenched with Graham Mertz early in the year, which I think might have cost them some of what Lagway could have brought. But I expect them to be better next year on offense. Also, hopefully for their sake, like schedule is a little less treacherous than it was.
It can't be any more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, well let's jump into our quarterfinal bracket update. So you nailed all your winners. I went 50% on winners, and this weekend we are fairly separated again. So could be an interesting weekend for one or both of us. But you've got all your quarterfinal matchups correct. We're going to talk about those in just a moment. I'm 50-50, but all of my semifinals are still alive, so I do still have a shot to have a respectable weekend this weekend. So,
yes, you do.
Yeah. But let's talk about it, man. We've got right out the gate Friday night. We've got Boise, Penn State. I want to throw this out there, like, or no, I'm sorry, not Friday night, New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So.
No, New Year's Day. These are all
Penn
on New Year's Day, aren't they?
I thought Penn State was New Year's Eve. Did I?
Oh, no, you're right. Penn State is New Year's Eve.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what had me thinking Friday versus Saturday because we typically play on Saturdays. But New Year's Eve, we've got a standalone CFP game. Boise State against Penn State in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. This was my thing. Like, these used to all just be New Year's Six games, right? Like, but now we're kind of moving things. But I will give them credit for this. I really liked having a standalone game Friday night last week because I thought it was interesting, like pomp and circumstance, but also we got 3 clear windows on Saturday for the other 3 games. So I like that with this weekend as well, because we've got Friday night this game, and then we've got 3 clear windows for the other 3 quarterfinal games on New Year's Day. So not Friday versus Saturday, but Tuesday night, Penn State versus Boise State. Let's talk about it. Penn State's an 11-point favorite. You're on Boise here with the 11 points, but in your bracket, just for a refresher, you actually have them winning as a double-digit dog. I've got Penn State winning the game. I'm going to lay the 11 points. I liked what I saw this past weekend from Penn State in terms of their ability to just be the bigger program, and they're going to need that again this weekend against maybe the best college football player we've seen in 15 years, 20 years, in Ashton Jeanty. I do think they have the horses on defense to be able to contend with that running attack. But if Ashton starts getting loose, he's a guy that can wreck a game. We saw him do it against Oregon early in the season. They needed 2 special teams touchdowns to beat Boise State. I don't think Penn State's going to be able to rely on something like that. So they're going to have to get out early and use those athletes and those horses that they've got on defense to slow the running game down. If they don't do that, I'm going to get burnt by Penn State. We're going to go back to the drawing board with Penn State, and they'll burn me. But talk to me about Boise State, why they're going to win this game outright, not just cover the 11.
So when Ashton Jeanty was doing media for the Heisman Trophy that he was robbed of, somebody asked him, what makes you deserving of this award? And he said, well, for the last 11 games, there have been 11 schools, I guess 10, he played UNLV twice. There have been 10 different programs whose entire game plan was to stop Ashton Jeanty, and not one of them succeeded. Not a single fucking time. That man sat out 8 quarters of football because his team had leads and rushed for almost 2,400 yards.
Yeah.
There is not... I don't know if there's a defense on earth that could slow that man down. Now, Maddox Madsen, on the other hand, they're going to need plays from him. He's going to have to make a couple plays in this game for them to win. I think that he can do that because of how keyed in on Jeanty that Penn State defense is going to be. Ashton Jeanty and Boise State have not played against a defense that has an Abdul Carter on their roster, and that guy's really good. Yeah. However, I believe in the ability of Boise State. I think their offensive line is actually pretty good. I know that Ashton Jeanty is the nation's second leading rusher if you just take his yards after contact. So it's not like all of his runs are just untouched to the house.
Yeah.
But they've opened up enough holes for him to be able to make things happen, right? I just believe, dude. I know you gave your whole spiel about how heavyweights and cruiserweights, and it's different than in college basketball because one guy can affect things more than in college football. And I don't disagree whatsoever. I think you nailed that spot on. But sometimes in college football, there are players that ascend themselves above the rest, and they are that impactful in games. And I think Ashton Jeanty is that guy. So I'm going to ride with Boise State. I'm going to ride with my guy, Ashton Jeanty, and I'm going to believe that they can go down into the desert and make some magic happen and come out of there with a win. Because I do not believe in James Franklin.
That's a good bet. Just bet against James Franklin for sure. Yeah, listen, I'm kind of in the catbird seat here a little bit in terms of like I'm either going to be right and have the right pick here, or I'm going to be able to watch the fireworks from Ashton Jeanty and watch him beat we'll call it Goliath because of these two programs, right? David
Sure.
Goliath, Boise State versus Penn State. James Franklin aside, we'll call them Goliath. But yeah, I'm going to either be able to say, yep, okay, Penn State, they aren't burning me again, or I'm going to watch Ashton Jeanty put on some big time fireworks down in the desert. All right. Then we move to Arizona State versus Texas. Another big line, 13.5 here. I'm going to lay the points. This is the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl for those tracking. This is in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta, indoors. So we're not going to have any sort of like weather or anything like that. So two teams from both the South and the Southwest, technically, one from deep in the desert. Texas versus Arizona State, though. I liked what I saw from Texas in round one against Clemson. I do agree with you that I think the offense from Arizona State poses a different challenge than Clemson's offense. I also think that Arizona State's defense is worse than Clemson's defense. I think this could be a bit of a shootout in terms of I think we're going to get fireworks in this game. But I just think that Texas has too much skill and talent on the defensive side of the ball for Arizona State to score enough. I think Arizona State's going to have to score 28 to cover 13.5 because I think Texas is going to get into the 40s potentially in this game. I think this is going to be a very, very fun game to watch, and if you're interested in offense, which most fans are. I just think that Texas has enough defensively that like 21 to 24 is where Arizona State's going to be, and it's just not going to be enough to cover 13.5.
Okay. Who's a better quarterback, Sam Leavitt or Cade Klubnik?
I'd give Leavitt the edge.
Okay. Well, Cade Klubnik just threw 3 touchdown passes and scored 24 points against this Texas defense. Who's a better running back, Phil Maffa or Cam Skattebo?
Well, Skattebo especially because Maffa didn't play much in that game.
Right. Well, I'm going to go with those two guys and count on them to put up some points in this game. If Texas had really blown out, I know they blew out Clemson, but like if it had been a defensive beatdown from the Texas defense, I would feel much better going against Arizona State. But we saw Clemson be successful on the offensive side of the ball, so I feel pretty confident in the ability of Arizona State to get out there and score some points. Now, this game being in Atlanta, I don't love that. It's a lot of – I know they have all the time in the world to travel, but, like, how many Arizona State fans are you going to get as compared to, like, nonstop flights from Austin to Atlanta? You know, like – so I think there will be a decided home field advantage, if you will. It's going to be a lot more burnt orange than there will be maroon and gold. So that gives me a little bit of pause. But I think that Texas wins this game for sure. It's just a matter of by how much, right? If you told me it was 35-28, I think I could envision that being the case. A little bit of a shootout, like you said. After seeing what that Texas defense did or did not do against that Clemson offense, which I think is fairly inept, I have confidence in Arizona State's ability to go out there and put up points.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we're close in terms of how we see this game going. I think Texas is going to get into the 40s, and if Arizona State doesn't beat the number 28, I think that's just too many points. So we'll see. I agree with you. I do think that, because what Clemson did offensively, I do expect Texas to maybe take a round turn on some of the mistakes they made defensively as well. But I do think Arizona State has the firepower to be able to score points against this defense. Yeah, Dad. I listen. Let's keep it going, right? I gotta keep it going for my pick for sure. They played very well against an outmatched opponent in the first round. So yeah.
SMU.
So SMU and being at home, cold. Team from Dallas is not loving.
2 good games in a row from Penn State: the Oregon game and the SMU game.
Really gonna get a third?
Who knows? Who knows? I know, but who knows?
You don't expect it for sure. I don't blame. That's the smart money, probably. All right, moving on to what I expect to be the game of the week. It was the game of the week when they played earlier in the season. Came down to very nip-tuck finish, an offensive PI, and various kind of. Will Howard didn't quite slide early enough to get an attempt at a field goal. Long field goal would have been a hell of a kick if they had been able to make it. But came down to a great finish. 2 great teams. It was in Eugene, in a very hostile environment. Ohio State, played a very good game up in the Pacific Northwest. You mentioned it. And it's probably the biggest reason why I'm on Ohio State laying the points in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State won this semi-comfortably. I don't expect them to blow Oregon out, but if they won this game by 10, it wouldn't surprise me, because what they showed me last weekend, Saturday night against Tennessee, in prime time, at home, in a stadium where Tennessee was drilling them on social media about invading the stadium, they were on a warpath. You picked the perfect word for what it looked like Saturday night. Chip Kelly had that offense humming. It looked like his days at Oregon when he knew he had the best athletes on the field, and they were just spread them out. We'll run the ball hard at them up the middle, but we're also going to get the ball on the edges. And JJ was great. Emeka was great. Will Howard had a very effective and efficient game. I expect that we're going to see more of that going forward. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a semi-comfortable win for an Ohio State program that seems like they've really buckled down after that embarrassing loss to Michigan.
Sorry, bad timing here. I'm yawning. This is great podcasting. This is the national championship game, in my opinion. These are the 2 best teams in the country. They have been all season long, aside from one blemish on Ohio State's resume, the Michigan game. I just hope that Chip Kelly continues to remember that Jeremiah Smith plays wide receiver for him, and tells Will Howard, he should just text Will Howard every day, be like, "Hey, dude, throw it to JJ.
JJ's open.
Yeah, JJ's open.
Even if he's covered, he's open.
Yep. Even if he's covered, he's open. Just toss it his direction.
Yeah,
and that will open everything else up. And they have you talked about the 2-headed monster in the backfield with Travion Henderson and the kid from Ole Miss. Yeah, Quinshon Judkins. Thank you. Sorry. Names, not my strong suit. Yeah, they have the 2-headed monster. Will Howard just has to play good. He doesn't have to be otherworldly or incredible. I think he has all of the things you need all of the skill, all of the ability, the mental. He's not going to make the mistake he made last time they played. I can tell you that. He's not going to slide too early or too late, whatever. This game is going to be incredible. This is the game I'm most excited for of like all the potential matchups when this 12-team field came out. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be big time. I believe in Oregon's ability to win this game. However, I think that Ohio State is going to win it because it's tough to beat a team twice in the season, and Ohio State is out for blood. And they have national championship aspirations because they lost the only other game that matters to them this season, which is the Michigan game. The only other thing in the world they fucking care about is winning a national title. And whatever is standing in front of them, I feel bad for that team, and it just so happens to be Oregon. Now, if we come into this game, I'm with you. I think Ohio State wins. You talk me to like 10 points. That's how I envision this going. I could be convinced that Oregon is going to come in and win this game, right? They've been the most consistent team all season long. You watch the game film from the last time they played. You make adjustments. Dylan Gabriel comes in and has like the game of his career. We haven't seen him in a month. He comes out and just lights the world on fire somehow against this awesome Ohio State defense. And maybe that's what happens. I don't expect that to be the case, but like Dan Lanning is a really good coach, and Oregon is as talented as anybody not named Ohio State, right? So like there is a world where we come into this game and Oregon just kind of does what they do and they roll through this program. But that's not something that I envision happening. I'm all over Ohio State here, and I feel pretty confident about it.
Yeah, for sure. And just to remind everybody, like I've now flipped on my pick in this game from the bracket. So that's what Ohio State did to me last weekend in terms of changing my impression of them, because the last taste that I had in my mouth was how bad they looked against Michigan and how much it seemed like they had forgotten that they were a very talented team and who was going to be able to make plays for them. But yeah, like if they regress to something like that offensively, they can't beat Oregon playing that way, right? They have to, as you said, right? Like Chip Kelly needs to remind Will Howard every day, all day, like JJ's still out there on the edge. Get him the fucking ball. Throw the ball to him. He's open. No matter if there's three guys on him, he's open. Just throw him the ball. But yeah, so my bracket potentially, I expect it to get busted this weekend because Ohio State, the juggernaut that they looked like last weekend, I think is the best team in the country, and the margin is probably not that close. Honestly. Yeah. All right, we finish up the weekend with Notre Dame and Georgia. We're on the opposite side of this one, and I might be making the same mistake that I made last week in expecting Indiana to compete with Notre Dame, but I know Gunnar Stockton is starting, and I know that Carson Beck has the injury that we all kind of guessed he did after that hit. It was crazy, tore his elbow up. He's going to have Tommy John surgery. I just don't know that Notre Dame is going to be able to bully Georgia the way that they did against Indiana, and that is the style of game that Notre Dame needs to play in order to win games. No matter who their opponent is, they need to be able to play that style because, as I said in the opening, I just don't know that I trust Notre Dame to win a game that they have to go score points. If they're able to keep Georgia off the board offensively, then this is going to play exactly how Notre Dame needs it to play. I just don't know that Notre Dame is going to be able to do what they did against Indiana. And we know that Kirby Smart is an aggressive coach. Kirby Smart won't make the same decisions that Curt Cignetti did for Indiana. So I'm going to swing to the Georgia side on this. I think this is going to be a single score game. I do think that this has the potential to be decided by the toe of a kicker, which is the line that Vegas put on this. Vegas expects potentially that this could come down to either a kick being made or a kick being missed. But I just Kirby Smart, Georgia has some people that are seasoned and been in these kinds of games. They played in the SEC championship game, survived the injury of Carson Beck in that game against Texas. He's not going to make the same coaching decisions that Curt Cignetti made either. So I'm on Georgia on this. I don't feel super confident in it, though. I just don't know that I can get behind either team in this one necessarily. Talk to me about Notre Dame, Georgia.
I don't know how Georgia scores in this game. That's my dilemma here, right? Obviously, they're going to score. I just don't know how that's going to happen.
Mm.
Is Gunnar Stockton ready to come in and play a top 10 matchup like right away? That dude couldn't see straight 2 weeks ago, after getting his bell absolutely rung. So I obviously that's he's moved on from that injury, but like that lingers in the guy's mind. He's playing against the Notre Dame defense it's pretty fucking good. I don't know who he's going to throw the ball to because that secondary in Notre Dame is going to be locking down those corners or those edges, right? And then is Trevor Etienne going to be healthy enough to make like a real impact in this game? That's my dilemma here when I'm thinking about this game. I think Notre Dame is going to win this game. I don't know how Notre Dame is going to score in this game. I don't know how anybody's going to score in this game because I know that Notre Dame is very good at running the ball, but guess what?
Georgia has 9-6 finish here.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Alabama, LSU national title all over again.
Yeah.
I know that Notre Dame is very good at running this ball or running the ball, but Georgia's defense is really fucking good too. Like, this is just going to be such like a chess game, I think, between these two coaches. Maybe Georgia's better because Carson Beck is not playing. Maybe that forces them to do. And I know that's funny because Carson Beck is not good, but like I mean that as like a style make fights kind of thing. Like maybe it forces them to do some different things on offense.
A lot of characters.
Exactly. Whereas previously throughout the season, they were relying on Carson Beck to just be a drop back guy and make things happen through the air. Well, maybe this forces them to change it up and kind of explore different options within their offensive playbook that they weren't previously doing.
Yeah.
So maybe they're better off for that. I don't know. I'm so intrigued by this game. I think it's gonna be awesome. First off, it is a real shame that these are the quarterfinal games and not the semifinal games because it feels like these are the four best teams left, right? Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, Georgia. Like those are the four best teams you have going forward. If you want to say Texas, I can understand because Carson Beck not being out is probably a bad thing for Georgia, even though I just said it might be a good thing. I think it's probably a bad thing for them. So you could maybe supplement Georgia and Texas in terms of like who the four best teams are going forward. But I'm super excited for this game. I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know what the script looks like. I imagine it's just going to be a shitload of running the ball. That's like it might be the shortest game of the weekend because they're just going to run the ball on both sides. But I struggle to see where the points come from both teams. But I do think that when plays are needed, I trust Riley Leonard more than I trust Gunnar Stockton. And I just don't know what to expect from Georgia. I truly have no idea what to think of Georgia coming into this game. But I know that Notre Dame is going to be stout defensively, and they're going to take the air out of the ball on the offensive side.
Yeah, for sure. Those people that like offense, this might not be the game to watch. I think both teams are going to do that. I think you talk about the out of character stuff from Georgia. Gunnar Stockton, much better athlete than Carson Beck, even though I think Carson Beck is kind of sneaky athletic in some ways. Yeah, right. Let me throw that fucking stereotype out there. But Gunnar Stockton is I think he's a better athlete, a little better with the ball in his hands, running the ball. Although he better fucking protect himself better than he did in the Texas game, because he was asleep at the end of that game. So that could be some of the things we see. Maybe a little more. Is it zone reads? Is it designed runs with the quarterback, get an extra blocker out there, those sorts of things. Maybe we see some of that kind of out of character stuff from Georgia in this game because I agree with you. I don't see how either team scores. Like in my head, I see this as like this is like a 13-10 finish or something along those lines. I think probably right in that area, but we'll see. I don't know how either offense is necessarily going to put up big points. All that being said, I said the same thing about the Tennessee game, and they scored like 100 combined points. So
yeah, true.
We'll see. We definitely didn't hit the under in the Tennessee Ohio State game. So maybe expect what is the over under in this one? It's got 43.5. It's still decent total. 43.5 is, but I don't think we're going to get there. So All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our quarterfinal picks. But we've got a week of other games between now and next Wednesday when we finish up the CFP quarterfinals. Anything off the board that you want to talk about? You want to talk to me about SC Illinois? Maybe the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl? How is Cheez-It the sponsor of the Citrus Bowl? Is that how they get the color of the Cheez-Its?
Yeah, it's artificial coloring. Yeah. South Carolina plays a football game next week. They're playing Illinois. Brett Bielema, last time he played South Carolina, he was the head coach of Arkansas, and he had lost 34-3. So I feel pretty good about that one. The spread, I think, is 9.5. Yeah, 9.5 currently.
Yeah.
So Carolina should walk all over Illinois in this game, right? That's kind of what the public is saying, or Vegas is saying at least. However, I don't know who's playing for South Carolina in this game. Like Rocket is not playing.
Yeah.
I mean, Lenoris is going to play, right? Harbor is going to play. Like our wide receivers are going to play. I think Jared Brown is actually coming back next year for another season. I don't know if Josh Simon is going to play. And then on the defense, my assumption is that Kyle Kennard is not going to play. Like Bam Martin Scott, probably not going to play. Demetrius Knight, probably not going to play. Nick Emanwari, probably not going to play. All-American, by the way. All-American safety, Nick Emanwari. Not a finalist for the what's the DB award? I don't remember what it. Yeah, the Thorpe. Not a Thorpe finalist, but he was an All-American. So riddle me that.
Yeah.
You know who was not an All-American at their position?
The guy who won both of those positional awards?
Yeah, that guy. The Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously we get
the positional offense and then the overall defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't a finalist at his defensive position.
Exactly. Yep. We also get the ReliaQuest Bowl, Alabama, Michigan.
I was going to bring up that rematch from last year in very different circumstances.
Very different circumstances. Also, the running back from Alabama transferred to Michigan.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll just let him play.
Yeah, right.
And then we hit North Texas. I guess this is next Friday, so we can talk about it. But North Texas, Texas State. This might be another auto bet. Yeah, over under 63.5. Just go ahead and take the over.
Take the over.
Although I got burned the other night.
Dude.
5 overtime game. I took the under 66.5. Yeah. Damn it. So sad.
5 overtimes it took to get there too.
Yep. For San Diego
Although
State.
I do want to restate my position on the triple overtime and later rule. It is the dumbest fucking rule in all of sports. These gimmick 2-point conversions should not. I don't want to see it, but I hope one of these CFP games comes down to this fucking gimmick and it leads to them getting rid of it, because it is the dumbest rule in all of sports, in my opinion. Going for 2 in 3 overtimes and later. Like, I understand their idea was like, we want to reduce the number of high speed collisions and try to get games over earlier. It doesn't work. We're still in short spaces, just beating each other up and running these 2-point plays. I don't like it. I don't know if your stance is necessarily in line with mine, but I fucking hate going for 2 to decide games in triple overtime and later.
Do you remember LSU Texas A&M?
Yeah.
7 overtime. The score was like 70 something.
Yeah.
That was electric, dude. Why would you want to take that away?
Yeah.
Why would you want to take that away?
Super, super awesome. I hate 2-point plays. I will remind you of Eli Manning's most memorable college football game, his 6 overtime game, when the rules were still the best rule. College football had the best overtime rules, hands down. They had it right. And then they decided they wanted to just, we don't need that anymore. So I don't know. I've always been a fan of the college overtime rules until they changed it and forced the 2-point conversions on people. Is too much.
Shout out to our good friend Mr. King, the resident Texas Tech fan in the house. North Dakota State safety Wisniewski transferring from North Dakota State an FCS school
His
to Texas
beloved
Tech.
FCS program.
Yep. He's not. I don't assume he's in here today, but I wish he was to hear that. But I'll let him know next time I see him.
Yeah.
FCS powerhouse sending talent down to Lubbock.
Yep.
Shout out the Red Raiders. Guns up, baby.
Yeah, for sure. Only other thing I wanted to mention is the Iowa State Miami game. I think I'll be paying attention to that. I think that's still within our week. That's not the following week. Iowa State Miami. Miami's a 3.5-point favorite. It'll be interesting to kind of see, as you mentioned with South Carolina, how many people played. There's going to be guys getting ready for the draft. Cam Ward's a presumptive number 1 or number 2 pick here if a quarterback needy team ends up at the top, those sorts of things. But it's an interesting matchup of two teams that were like on the brink of getting into the college football playoff and kind of dropped the ball in their final games of the season. Miami, obviously, against my beloved Orange. Shout out Kyle McCord. And Iowa State, obviously, in the Big 12 championship game against newcomer Arizona State, dropping the ball there as well. So shout out to those guys in terms of that game. I think that'll be interesting to kind of see whether either of those programs uses it as an opportunity to kind of bounce back from disappointing ends to their bid for the college football playoff.
You get Colorado BYU as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I don't know who's going to play in that game either.
Yeah, for sure. Also, like, not the two teams I would have thought that would have been selected for the Alamo Bowl. Like,
nope. That should be North Texas and Texas State.
Yeah, for sure. But like, not only that, like, do we ever really end up with like two teams from the same conference picked in bowl games?
Yeah, that's
what got me kind of weirded out by this selection is the fact that they're both in the Big 12. Like,
yeah, that is an interesting thing.
I'd have to do some real research to dig and see, but I don't remember, other than like CFP games, right? And back when the BCS decided the two participants in the national championship game, I don't remember seeing bowl games with like teams from the same conference. I don't know. Man,
we have to wait 10 days after the semifinal for the national title game.
Yeah. We get a whole show between to just talk about it, and then another one to preview it. Yeah, I mean, it looked good for them. They can rest up a little bit of an extra break, but yeah.
What's that? A Friday? They play Friday. They play Thursday. Then they play Friday.
Yeah, there's one game, one day, and then
2 weekends off.
Tuesday, I believe, is the
Monday.
Is it a Monday? Okay,
it's a Monday. Okay. Yeah, college football always plays their championship on a Monday night.
That's right, Monday.
Which is insane. Just play it on that Saturday before.
I think part of it is like NFL playoffs. They don't want to compete, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Do the NFL, like, have an afternoon NFL game, have the Saturday night be college football national championship.
Yeah, that'd be an electric day.
Yeah, and then do Sunday playoff. Like, what are we doing?
That'd be an electric day for sure. Yeah, keep your Saturday, man. Keep your Saturday. Yeah. Everybody thinks Saturday for college football.
Yep. Honestly, that's what they should be doing. Like, I understand the sanctity of playing it on New Year's and all that stuff. Just play it on the Saturday, man.
Yeah.
Just play it on Saturday.
Shit. In my head, it was already Saturday.
True. Fuck. True.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that if you're going to, I also think they need to not have them in those bowl games. Like, I get the idea of like the kind of royalty of those bowls, but like, just make these different games.
Yeah.
And just, if you want to have them in those stadiums, that's fine. If you want to have them at those sites or you want to pick other sites, fine. But like, make them standalone CFP games. You want to do the first round of home games on campus? Awesome. I'd even be okay with quarterfinal being on campus if they really wanted to, but
sure,
make them neutral site, not the fucking Fiesta Bowl and blah blah blah. Like,
yep.
Give give me standalone and let me keep my New Year's 6 games and give somebody else some run in those games, whatever. Anyway, I'm the old man. Fucking get off my lawn.
Same.
Yeah. Anyway, any closing thoughts here before we get to the quarterfinal games this week, and we'll have a couple to talk. We'll have all of them to talk about because we're gonna do next week after New Year's as well, just like we did this week.
No, I just hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas, wonderful time with their friends and family, and have an awesome New Year because we won't see you until the calendars change.
Yeah.
So for all of y'all out there, thank you so much for another wonderful, I guess, calendar year of college football. The season's not over, but we'll be back doing it again next year.
Yes, sir. Perfectly put. I've got nothing to add to it. For Bentley and the rest of us here at Backyard Sports, this has been Tailgate Trash Talk, brought to you by Backyard Sports. We are